There are moments in life when a flicker of understanding passes through the veils of our perception, moments when the universe seems to lean closer, whispering secrets long hidden from the eyes of the ordinary. The notion of death, perhaps the most universal of human fears, stands as one of those secrets, veiled by the fabric of existence itself. It is, after all, the end of everything we know, the mysterious abyss that waits for us all. Or so we've been told. What if, after this, you find yourself questioning the very nature of that end? What if, after stepping beyond the familiar limits of your mind, you come to realize that death is not a boundary to cross, but a shadow cast by something far deeper, something more eternal than we can imagine? The experience of death, our death, the death of loved ones, the death of the unknown, holds a strange power over our lives. It forms the backdrop of our motivations, fears, and desires. We live in constant awareness that one day our time will end, and this awareness shapes the way we interact with the world. It is the invisible hand that guides us, urging us to live fully, to cherish the fleeting moments we have. And yet, what if that guiding force is but a reflection of something far more profound, a distortion, a veil over a deeper truth? If we dare to look beyond, what will we see? Imagine, then, that everything you've ever been told about death is but the surface of a much larger, cosmic puzzle. What if death, as we understand it, is nothing more than a shadow cast by the illusions of time and space? What if the boundaries we place around life and death are nothing more than the limitations of our consciousness, a consciousness tethered to a narrow view of reality? Perhaps the truth about death is not the fearsome force that awaits us at the end of a line, but cosmic shift, a pivot of understanding that opens the gates to an existence far more expansive than we could ever have imagined. For centuries, humanity has been captivated by the concept of life after death, the idea of an eternal soul, and the search for immortality. Our religion, philosophies, and even scientific pursuits have been driven by this single question: what happens when we die? We have built an elaborate construct around the idea of death, rites, rituals, beliefs, all designed to make sense of that which is inherently unknowable. But what if, in our search for meaning, we have overlooked the most fundamental truth? That death, as we perceive it, may not be an end at all, but a passage, a transformation, or even a mere illusion. This is not a question for the faint-hearted. To entertain such a thought requires a willingness to venture beyond the known, to stretch the fabric of our understanding to its breaking point. It calls for an openness to the possibility that the very nature of reality is not what it seems, that our understanding of life and death is as limited as a dreamer's view of the world. Just as a dream may seem entirely real while we are within it, yet fade into nothingness once we awaken, so too may our lives seem bounded by birth and death, only for us to discover, when the time is right, that these boundaries are but the lines of a much larger, more intricate story. And yet, herein lies the invitation. To question death is to question life itself. If death is not the end, then what does that say about the nature of our existence? What if we are not simply bound to a single life, but exist as part of a far grander pattern, a cosmic dance that stretches across lifetimes, dimensions, and realities? What if, instead of fearing the end, we could learn to see death as part of an endless cycle of transformation, an eternal flow from one state of being to another, as natural and essential as the shifting of seasons? This idea, though not new, is one that has been whispered to the ages by mystics, sages, and philosophers who have glimpsed the deeper mysteries of the universe. From the ancient teachings of the East to the esoteric traditions of the West, there has always been a thread of knowledge that points to a greater truth about death, a truth that lies hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. These teachings, once locked away in sacred texts, oral traditions, or secret societies, have slowly made their way to the surface, as though the time is now ripe for humanity to receive them. What we are about to explore is a shift of perception so profound that, once fully understood, it will change the way you see not only death, but also life itself. This is not a mere intellectual exercise or a philosophical pondering. It is a transformative realization that reaches deep into the core of our being. It is a kind of truth that, once touched, leaves a permanent mark on the soul. After you encounter it, you will never look at the world or your own life quite the same way again. So, if you are ready to step beyond the veil, to look into the depths where reality bends and shatters the illusions we've held so dear, then take a deep breath and allow yourself to be led by the subtle whispers of ancient wisdom. The journey is not for the faint-hearted, but for those who are willing to see beyond the veil of what we call death and embrace the boundless possibilities of what lies beyond. As we embark on this exploration, we must first ask ourselves what it is that we believe we understand about death. We speak of it as though it were an absolute, a finality, the closing of a door, the fading of a light. But what if this is merely a shadow of the truth? What if the essence of death, like so many things we perceive, is just a veiled illusion, a concept shaped by the limitations of our senses and the narrow confines of our understanding? At the core of the human experience, there's an inherent desire to understand the nature of existence. We seek to answer the age-old questions. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And inevitably, we arrive at the question of death. What happens when this life ends? It is a question that has haunted us for centuries, shaping our religion, philosophies, and worldviews. But what if this question in its very form is misguided? What if death as we know it is simply a way for us to make sense of something far more complex and elusive? The first step in unraveling the mystery of death is to recognize that our understanding of it is built upon assumptions about time, space, and consciousness. We think of death as a cessation of life, as the end of our physical existence. We imagine it as a moment in time, a transition from one state to another. But time, as we understand it, is a construct, an invention of the human mind to make sense of the flow of experiences. What if time itself is not the linear progression we believe it to be, but a vast, interconnected web of possibilities? What if death is not the end of time, but a shifting of timelines, a realignment of energies that transcends our linear conception of existence? Consider the idea that life and death are not separate, but part of the same eternal process. We are not born into this world and then pass out of it, but rather we flow through an infinite cycle of being. Each life a brief manifestation of the eternal energy that underlies all existence. What we perceive as death may simply be the transition from one form to another, a reconfiguration of the energy that animates us, moving through different dimensions, different states of being, as naturally as a river flowing from one bank to the next. Life, death, and everything in between are not linear steps, but continuous waves, rippling to the fabric of reality. This idea is not foreign to those who have explored the depths of consciousness and existence. Mystical traditions across the world have long taught that the soul, or the essence of the self, is eternal, never truly born and never truly dying. In the Hindu tradition, for instance, there is a belief in samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, where the soul moves from one incarnation to another, learning, evolving, and growing through each life. Similarly, in many Western esoteric traditions, death is seen not as an end, but as a transformation, a passage from one realm to another, from one state of consciousness to another. The soul in these teachings is not bound by time or space, but exists in a state of eternal flow, ever-changing, ever-evolving, moving through the infinite corridors of existence. To understand this concept, we must also delve into the nature of consciousness itself. What is consciousness? Is it merely the activity of the brain, the firing of neurons and synapses, or is it something deeper, more expansive, an essence that transcends a material body and connects us to the vast, infinite cosmos? Many of the great thinkers and mystics throughout history have argued that consciousness is not confined to the physical brain, but is a universal force, a fundamental aspect of reality itself. If this is true, then death, as we understand it, cannot be the end of consciousness. It is merely a shift, a change, a way that consciousness interacts with the physical world. In this sense, death becomes not a final destination, but a doorway, an opening into new realms of experience, new dimensions of consciousness. Just as we move from one room to another in a house, so too does our consciousness move from one state of being to another. And much like the house has many rooms, each with its own purpose and function, the universe too has many dimensions, many planes of existence, each offer its own unique experiences and challenges. Death, in this view, is not a loss but a transition, a passage from one room to the next in the infinite mansion of the cosmos. The idea that death is not an end but a transition is further supported by the concept of the pineal gland, often referred to as a third eye in mystical traditions. The pineal gland, a small organ located deep within the brain, has long been associated with spiritual awakening and higher states of consciousness. It is said to be the gateway through which we access higher dimensions of reality, where time and space no longer have the same meaning. Some believe that the pineal gland is responsible for the mystical experiences of out-of-body journeys, near-death experiences, and even contact with the afterlife. Could it be that this small, often overlooked gland is the key to unlocking the truth about death? What if, through the activation of the pineal gland, we can transcend the boundaries of our physical existence and perceive reality in its entirety, seeing beyond the veil of time, space, and death itself? These concepts may seem far-fetched to those who are grounded in the material world, but the more we explore the mysteries of consciousness and existence, the more we realize that the boundaries we constructed around life and death are artificial. They are constructs of the mind, shaped by the limitations of our perceptions. To step beyond these boundaries is to awaken to the greater truth that life and death are not opposites, but two sides of the same coin, a coin that is forever in motion, forever shifting, forever transforming. As we continue on this journey, we will explore the deeper symbolic narratives that hint at these hidden truths. We will delve into the stories that have been passed down through the ages, stories that, at their core, speak of transformation, transcendence, and the eternal nature of the soul. These stories, though ancient, still resonate with us today, for they speak of truths that transcend time and space, truths that are as relevant now as they were when they were first told. In the shadows of ancient texts, under the layers of history and myth, there are stories that persist, not merely as tales, but as carriers of profound truths about existence, transformation, and the eternal dance of life and death. These stories, passed down through generations, whisper the secrets of the universe, subtly pointing to realities beyond the visible world, beyond the confines of linear time. They are stories of death not as an end, but as a doorway, of life not as a single momentary spark, but as a continuous, ever-flowing current that transcends all boundaries. One of the most enduring symbols in human consciousness is that of the phoenix, a bird that is born, lives, dies, and is reborn from its own ashes. This ancient symbol, found in countless cultures and spiritual traditions, carries with a message that is both simple and profound. Death is not the final word in the story of existence. It is but a transition, a necessary part of the cycle of renewal. The phoenix is a powerful metaphor for the eternal nature of the soul, for it shows us that even in what seems like an ultimate end, there is a seed of new life waiting to be born. The phoenix's death is not a tragedy, but a fulfillment. It is the death of the old self, the ego, the limitations of single form. And in this death, there is a release, a liberation from the confines of time and space. The ashes of the phoenix are not mere remnants of what once was, but the fertile ground to which a new form emerges, shining with new vitality. This is not a story of despair, but a hope. The hope that death, in its truest form, is not the cessation of being, but the transformation of being. The soul, like the phoenix, is never bound by a single form. It is free to rise again and again, perpetually shedding the old, emerging into the new, in an endless cycle of rebirth. Similarly, in the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, we encounter a powerful allegory for the journey of the soul. Orpheus, the great musician, descends into the underworld to retrieve his beloved wife, Eurydice, who has died. With his music, he charms the gods of the underworld, and they agree to let him take Eurydice back with him to the world of the living, on one condition. He must not look back at her until they have both reached the surface. And yet, in a moment of doubt and fear, Orpheus looks back, and in that instant, Eurydice is lost in him forever. This story, while tragic, is also deeply symbolic. It speaks to the tension between the material and spiritual worlds, between the realms of life and death. Orpheus's moment of doubt, the moment when he looks back, is symbolic of the human condition, the inability to fully trust in the unknown, the instinctive desire to hold on to what we know, even at the cost of deeper truths. But the story also suggests that the journey of the soul is not always linear. There are moments of uncertainty, of loss, but there is also the potential for growth and transformation. Even in his failure, Orpheus's journey is a reminder that death is not final. It is simply one part of the greater tapestry of existence, and beyond it, there's always the possibility of another chance, another beginning. The myth of the hero's descent into the underworld is a recurring motif in many cultures. From Inanna's journey to the underworld in Sumerian mythology to the Greek myth of Persephone, The theme of death and resurrection plays a central role in human understanding of the soul's journey. These myths show us that the underworld is not a place of finality, but a space of transformation. To journey into the depths, to face the darkness of death, is to undergo a profound metamorphosis. It is through this journey that the soul emerges stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the deeper currents of existence. In these stories, death is not the enemy. It is a catalyst for growth, the forge in which the soul is tempered. This is a crucial aspect of understanding death, that it is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. In the ancient Egyptian myth of Osiris, we see another powerful example of death as transformation. Osiris, the god of the afterlife, is killed and dismembered by his brother Set, only to be resurrected by his wife, Isis. This resurrection is not a return to what was, but rebirth into a new form. Osiris, in his new state, becomes a ruler of the afterlife, overseeing the souls of the dead and guiding them to the mysteries of existence. This idea of death as a transformation is central to many mystical traditions. It is not merely the end of physical life, but the shedding of old limitations, the transcendence of the ego, and the awakening to a higher level of consciousness. In many spiritual teachings, death is seen as a passage from one state of being to another. It is the soul's journey from one realm of experience to another, from one level of understanding to a deeper, more expansive one. This transformation is not a linear process, but a spiral, a continuous unfolding of the soul's journey through different states of being, each one a step closer to the ultimate truth. As we reflect on these ancient myths and stories, we begin to see a common thread. That death, far from being an end, is a transformation, a shedding of the old and a rebirth into the new. It is a necessary part of the eternal flow of existence, a flow that transcends time, space, and form. The stories we have explored of the Phoenix, Orpheus, Osiris, and others reveal a profound truth, that death is not to be feared, but understood as a vital part of the soul's journey. It is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter, a new manifestation of the eternal essence of the self. In the next section, we will explore how these symbolic truths can be integrated into our daily lives. How can we apply this understanding of death and transformation to our own experiences? How can we transcend our fear of death and embrace the eternal flow of existence? Having explored the timeless stories and symbolic narratives that reveal death not as an end, but as a transformation, we now turn to question: how does this new understanding impact the way we live our lives? How can we integrate the profound wisdom of these ancient teachings into the way we experience the world today? In our everyday existence, the fear of death casts a long shadow. It shapes our decisions, our desires, and often our very sense of self. We cling to life, not because we truly understand what life is, but because we fear the unknown, because we're told that death is the ultimate end. This fear makes us grasp for control, accumulate material wealth, seek fleeting pleasures, and build walls around our hearts to protect us from the inevitable. But what if we could live without this fear? What if, instead of living in resistance to death, we could embrace it, seeing it not as a threat, but as a natural part of the eternal flow of life? To live without the fear of death is to live more fully, more freely. It is to awaken to the understanding that we are not separate from the cycles of nature, but part of an eternal unfolding. Just as the seasons change, so too do we flow through different stages of life, each one a necessary step in our spiritual evolution. By embracing death as a transformation, we begin to see every moment as precious, every experience as a chance for growth, every obstacle as an opportunity to shed the old and emerge anew. This shift in perspective requires a deep change in consciousness. We must begin to see our lives not as a singular, finite journey, but as part of a much larger, interconnected web of existence. To do this, we must cultivate a sense of presence, of mindfulness in the here and now. When we are deeply present, we are not preoccupied with the future or the past. We are fully immersed in the experience of life as it is unfolding. And in this presence, we begin to see that death, far from being a source of anxiety, becomes a reminder to live more authentically. The fear of death often keeps us stuck in patterns that do not serve us. We hold on to relationships, jobs, and possessions out of sense of attachment, fearing that without them, we will lose our sense of self. But if we understand that life is constantly shifting and evolving, we realize that attachment is simply a form of resistance to the natural flow of existence. True freedom comes when we release our attachment to outcomes, when we surrender the flow of life and allow ourselves to be transformed by it. In this surrender, we discover that we are not bound by the things we accumulate or the roles we play, but by the eternal essence of who we truly are. One of the most powerful ways to integrate this understanding into our lives is through the practice of mindfulness and meditation. These ancient practices teach us to quiet the mind, to observe the thoughts and emotions that arise without becoming attached to them. In the stillness of the mind, we begin to glimpse the eternal nature of our consciousness. We see that we are not our thoughts, our bodies, or even our emotions. We are the awareness that observes them. And in this awareness, we begin to understand that death is not the cessation of consciousness, but transformation of it, a shifting from one state of being to another. This realization frees us from the fear of death and opens us to a deeper understanding of life. In practical terms, embracing this shift means living with a sense of impermanence. We begin to recognize that everything in our lives is temporary. Our relationships, our careers, our possessions, all of it is in constant flux. This does not mean that we should detach from the world or become indifferent to it. On the contrary, it means that we can fully engage with life, knowing that it is transient. We can love deeply, work passionately, and pursue our goals, but with the understanding that none of it is permanent. This awareness frees us to live more authentically, to make choices based on what is truly important to us, rather than out of fear or attachment. Another way to integrate this understanding is by confronting our own mortality. We may resist the idea of death, but by contemplating it, we can develop a deeper appreciation for life. This is not a morbid exercise, but a way of cultivating gratitude. When we recognize the impermanence of life, we begin to value every moment more deeply. We understand that each breath, each step, is a gift. This awareness shifts our priorities, helping us to focus on what truly matters: connection, love, growth, and the pursuit of wisdom. Living without the fear of death also means embracing change. As we have seen in the stories of the Phoenix, Orpheus, and Osiris, death is not a singular event, but a continuous process of transformation. In our own lives, this means that we must be open to change, to letting go of the old and embracing the new. We are not static beings. We are constantly evolving, constantly shifting, constantly becoming something new. When we resist change, we resist life itself. But when we embrace change, we align ourselves with the natural flow of existence. We become more adaptable, more resilient, and more attuned to the deeper currents of life. This also calls us to release the attachments to our identities. So much of who we think we are is tied to the roles we play in society, the career we have, the relationships we hold, the image we project. But these roles are not our true selves. Our true essence is beyond form, beyond the labels we attach to ourselves. By releasing these attachments, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of who we truly are, an eternal soul, not bound by the limitations of time, space, or identity. In the end, embracing the idea that death is not an end, but a transformation, allows us to live with greater freedom, peace, and purpose. We can live in a moment, unburdened by fear or attachment, and open to the infinite possibilities that life has to offer. We no longer see death as a force that controls us, but as a reminder of the deeper, eternal truth that we are not defined by our physical bodies or our time in this world. We are part of the eternal flow of existence, and our journey is not bound by the limitations of time, but by the infinite possibilities of the soul. As we come to the close of this exploration, the veil that once separated us from the truth about life and death begins to lift, revealing the underlying unity that has always been present, hidden beneath the layers of our perceptions. What we have uncovered is not merely a new philosophical idea or a clever reframe, but a profound shift in consciousness, a shift that has the power to transform the very way we engage with life and death, time and eternity, and the essence of our being. To truly embrace the understanding that death is not an end, but transformation, a doorway through which we pass from one state of existence to another, is to awaken to the infinite possibilities that life offers. It is to see death not as a looming shadow, but as a natural and necessary part of the eternal flow of the universe. In this awareness, we begin to realize that the separation between life and death, between the physical and the spiritual, is illusory. They are not opposing forces, but two aspects of the same cosmic dance. When we live with the awareness that death is not a final destination, but a transition, we begin to shed the burdens of fear and attachment. The weight of our mortality, which has so often held us back from living fully, begins to dissolve. We no longer need to cling to fleeting moments, to hold on to the transient aspects of life with desperate hands. Instead, we can live freely, knowing that every experience, every encounter, is part of a much larger, eternal story, a story that transcends the boundaries of time and space. This understanding does not lead us to a life of passivity or resignation, but to one of profound engagement. When we see death as a natural part of the cycle of existence, we can live more fully in the present. We can invest ourselves in our relationships, our passions, and our dreams, not from a place of fear or desperation, but from a place of freedom. We no longer live as though we are running out of time, but as though we have all the time in the world. Time to explore, to grow, to love, and to evolve. In embracing the eternal flow of life, we are invited to transcend the limitations of our identities, of our roles, and of our ego. We come to see that we are not defined by our past, our achievements, or our failures, but by the eternal essence of who we truly are. We are not separate from the universe, but an integral part of it, a consciousness that moves through the ever-changing forms of existence, ever-growing, ever-evolving. When we release our attachment to the transient aspects of our identity, we open ourselves to the infinite possibilities of our soul's journey. But this understanding is not merely intellectual. It must be integrated into the way we live, the way we move through the world. To truly transform our relationship with death is to live with a deep sense of presence, to live fully in each moment, knowing that it is not the moment itself that defines us, but the way we engage with it. Life, in its truest sense, is a series of moments, each one an opportunity for transformation, for growth, and for the deepening of our connection with the eternal. When we embrace the impermanence of each moment, we begin to live more authentically, more truly, more in alignment with the flow of existence. At the heart of this journey is the invitation to release our fear, not only the fear of death, but the fear of change, of loss, and of the unknown. Fear has long been the force that keeps us tethered to the illusions of time and space, to the attachments that bind us to the material world. But as we let go of our attachment to death, we are also freed from the other fears that limit our potential. We begin to see that fear is not something to be conquered, but something to be understood, something to be transcended. This shift in consciousness is not always easy. It requires us to confront the deep-seated beliefs that have shaped our understanding of life and death, to question the stories we've been told, and to step beyond the boundaries of what we thought we knew. But it is a necessary journey, a journey that leads us to the heart of our true nature, where death is not an enemy, but a guide, a teacher, and a companion on the path of transformation. So, as you move forward from this moment, I invite you to carry this awareness with you. Let the realization that death is not an end, but a transformation, permeate every aspect of your life. Allow it to shift the way you view yourself, the world around you, and the relationships you hold dear. Live with the knowledge that you are not bound by the limitations of time, but free to explore the infinite possibilities of the eternal soul. Death, in this new understanding, is not something to fear. It is something to celebrate. It is an eternal invitation to shed the old and embrace the new, to transcend the limitations of our human form, and to awaken to the boundless nature of our being. It is the cosmic dance, the eternal rhythm of existence that moves us ever forward, ever upward, ever deeper into the mystery of life. In this moment, take a deep breath and know that you are part of something much larger than yourself. You are not alone in your journey. You are part of the infinite, eternal flow of existence, and your life, your very being, is a reflection of the divine dance of the universe. You are both the dreamer and the dream, both the beginning and the end, both the seed and the blossom. And so, in the face of death, we are called not to fear, but to embrace, not to resist, but to surrender to the eternal truth that we are not bound by the limits of time, but free to explore the infinite possibilities of the soul. As you walk this path, let your heart be light, your spirit free, and your soul open to the endless journey of transformation. For in the end, death is not the final word. It is simply the beginning of a new chapter in the eternal story of existence. Thus, we come to the final truth, that life and death are not separate, but part of the same infinite flow. The more we understand this, the more we align ourselves with the eternal rhythm of the cosmos. And when we do, we are no longer bound by fear or illusion, but free to live fully, freely, and eternally. This is the invitation. To live as if death were not an end, but a transformation, a continuous unfolding of the soul's journey through the vast, infinite realms of existence. And so we are free. We are eternal. We are life itself. This is the truth. Embrace it, live it, and let it guide you on your journey. With that, the transformation begins.